Some campuses inspire goals, futures, and fear. Hidden beneath the ivy-covered walls of Elmwood University lies a mystery buried deeper than textbooks and forgotten lecture notes. Students vanish. Files are erased. And the silence? It's louder than any scream. Tonight, we follow a determined graduate student, a young woman obsessed with uncovering the truth behind a disappearance long dismissed as rumor. But every clue she uncovers brings her closer to a darkness that refuses to stay hidden. Because here, knowledge doesn't set you free. It traps you. Welcome to Elmwood University, where the halls echo with secrets, and the missing are only the beginning. It began, as many tragedies do, in a place that promised safety, the university campus. Elmwood University, with its ivy-clad walls and centuries-old libraries, seemed like the kind of institution where the most pressing worry would be a missed assignment or a late-night coffee spill. But appearances could be deceiving. Behind the polished marble and manicured lawns, there were shadows no student wanted to walk into, and some shadows were more literal than anyone could imagine. Sophie Madsen was a graduate student in her final semester. She was meticulous, the sort of student who kept color-coded notes and always submitted her drafts early. Her dissertation, titled The Vanishing, an analysis of unsolved campus disappearances, was more than an academic requirement, it was her obsession. She had become fixated on the case of Emily Clarke, a junior who had vanished without a trace nearly 2 decades earlier. Emily's disappearance had never been solved. Over the years, it had faded into whispered legends among students, the story of the girl who walked to the library one night and never returned. Sophie spent months combing through archives, old police reports, and news clippings. She conducted interviews with professors who remembered Emily, classmates who had known her, and even campus security officers who had worked the night Emily disappeared. Every lead seemed to circle back to the same frustrating dead ends: a library janitor who remembered seeing a shadowy figure, a misplaced backpack that reappeared weeks later, and a diary that stopped mid-sentence. What intrigued Sophie most wasn't just the mystery, it was the pattern. Over the years, other disappearances had occurred, all connected by a subtle, almost imperceptible thread. Students would vanish near the campus library or the old science hall. There were rumors of secret societies, of illicit experiments, of unsanctioned research. Sophie didn't care about the rumors, she wanted evidence. And the more she dug, the more she felt like Emily's case wasn't an anomaly, it was part of something larger. Something deliberate. Her friends warned her. "Don't get too involved," they said. "It's just a thesis, sophomore, don't let it consume you." But Sophie couldn't stop. Every night, she stayed in the dim glow of her desk lamp, poring over transcripts and case files, annotating each detail in red ink. And every night, the feeling grew, that someone, or something, was watching. It started with small things. Her books would be moved slightly on the shelf, notes she swore she hadn't touched were rearranged, her computer cursor would blink in odd patterns when she returned from a break. She chalked it up to stress at first, but even she couldn't deny the unease that settled into her chest like ice. Then she found it. Or rather, it found her. It was a footnote buried deep in one of Emily Clarke's personal letters, stored in the university archives. Emily had written about a study room that isn't on the map. Sophie cross-referenced the blueprints of the library and the adjacent science hall. At first glance, everything seemed normal. But a careful eye would notice a small, unmarked door in the basement of the old library, listed as maintenance access in some documents but entirely absent in others. The door didn't appear in any recent maps, and campus security acted as though it didn't exist. Sophie became obsessed with that door. She started visiting the library late at night, ostensibly for research but really just to linger near the basement. She'd check her phone constantly, taking pictures of the walls, the pipes, the heavy lock that barred access. One night, a janitor caught her peering at the door. "You shouldn't be down here," he said, voice low and hesitant. "Some doors are locked for a reason." She smiled politely and walked away, but the warning lingered. As weeks passed, Sophie's nights became a blur. She began dreaming about the library, about long corridors that twisted impossibly, doors that led to nowhere, whispers in languages she didn't know. She woke up in cold sweats, convinced that someone was moving in her apartment, leaving things in different places, scratching notes on the margins of her thesis while she slept. Friends noticed the change. She smiled less, spoke less, and started carrying a small pepper spray canister everywhere, convinced that the university held dangers beyond ordinary comprehension. Then came the invitation. It was a letter, unsigned, slipped under her apartment door late one night. The paper was thick and old, the handwriting precise but unfamiliar. It read simply. The answers you seek are behind the door. But once you enter, you cannot leave. Sophie should have thrown it away. She should have called the police. But curiosity, her defining characteristic, overpowered caution. She spent that night planning, examining the lock mechanisms on the basement door and her photos, memorizing the timing of security patrols, learning the exact routes to and from the hidden corridor. She even brought a small camera, intending to document everything. On a Tuesday evening, when the campus was quiet and the air heavy with the scent of rain, Sophie slipped into the library. The halls were deserted. Her heart hammered as she descended to the basement, clutching her backpack like a shield. She found the door. It was old metal, pitted with rust, and the lock was simple enough that she could manipulate it with a paperclip and a steady hand. The moment the door clicked open, a chill swept over her. Inside was a narrow, dimly lit hallway, lined with concrete walls that seemed impossibly thick. The air smelled of damp earth and something metallic. Sophie stepped inside, holding the camera in front of her. What she saw made her gasp. The walls were covered with photographs, some decades old, all depicting students who had disappeared over the years. Emily Clarke's face stared back at her from several of them. Each photo was labeled with a date, a class, sometimes a note in a meticulous hand, study concluded. Subject unavailable. Sophie's pulse quickened, and a cold realization settled in her stomach. This wasn't just a hidden archive. It was a shrine. An archive of victims. She moved further down the corridor, the camera's flashlight beam bouncing off the walls. The hallway seemed to stretch and twist in ways no architect intended, folding in on itself like a maze alive with purpose. The photographs seemed to follow her as she passed. And then she heard it, a whisper, faint at first, growing louder, overlapping, until it formed words she could barely comprehend: stay, join, complete the study. Panic clawed at her. She retraced her steps toward the door she had come through, but the corridor twisted and shifted impossibly. The door she had unlocked was gone, replaced by a smooth, blank wall. Sophie ran, turning corners that led nowhere, hallways that folded into each other. Time lost meaning. Minutes, hours, perhaps days, it was impossible to tell. She found a stairwell and descended, hoping to find an exit, only to discover another series of locked doors. Each one led to another corridor, another room, another gallery of faces. And then, in the corner of one hallway, she saw it, a desk, exactly like the one she used at home, with her thesis open on it, pages spread, notes in her handwriting, but not hers. Additions, annotations, arrows pointing to Emily Clarke, to dates, to places Sophie hadn't yet discovered. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned. A figure, indistinct, shadowed, nodded toward the desk. In that instant, Sophie understood, the study never ended. The thesis was never about solving a mystery. It was about becoming part of it. And just like that, the hallway swallowed her whole. Days later, when campus security finally investigated a tip from a student who heard strange noises from the library basement, they found nothing. No trace of Sophie Madsen. No signs of struggle. The basement door, once rusted and old, had vanished, leaving nothing but a blank wall. Her thesis remained on her desk in the library, unsent and unfinished, pages neatly stacked. Some students whispered that the final pages were filled with warnings, others claimed the words changed daily, as if the text itself were alive. Emily Clarke's file was reopened in the university archives. Security cameras were reviewed. Nothing. Every lead ended where it had begun. The disappearances continued to be catalogued, quietly noted in footnotes, eventually fading into whispers among students who would never know the full truth. And so Elmwood University kept its secrets, hiding in plain sight. Some corridors stretch farther than maps allow. Some doors open only to those who seek answers too desperately, who want to dig too deep. And for those who do, sometimes the thesis is never finished, because the final chapter writes itself. The final line of Sophie's dissertation, as far as anyone ever saw, was scrawled in the margin of the last page. To understand the missing, you must become one of them. And somewhere in the labyrinth beneath the ivy-clad walls, the shadows waited, patient as ever.